Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My. Inspector General Kafari, Joe Kafari, is one of the most honorable men I've ever met. I've had interactions with many in 7 years of congressional service to my country. He's a rare combination of experience and intellect and honor and principle. You always get a straight answer from Joe Kafari. Hope America's listening to him today. It's an attack after attack after attack from the left. The man's not looking at no issues, responding from his head because he knows what's going on. It's no surprise that the Biden administration and my colleagues across the aisle don't like him, because he's an honorable man that speaks the truth. There's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth over there. The Democrats' issue with Inspector General Kafari is that he's an actual investigator, he's not a political hack, and he speaks the truth. Here's the problem, though, that my colleagues launching these attacks against this good man face. Joe Kafari is a principled man, and he deals with personal attacks against him like something stuck to the bottom of his boot. Inspector General Kafari, you've been accused of conducting your survey. You surveyed over 9,000 agents, is my understanding. Our colleagues managed to leave that out. They act like you talked to 28 people. Over 9,000 agents participated. And in your report that you provided, you go on to attest to the quality of the survey, which essentially, amazing to America watching, you came to the conclusion that these border agents that have been tasked with dealing with the disintegration of our sovereignty at the southern border, they've been moved from all across the country to work the southern border, taken away from their primary law enforcement role to do housekeeping and social work. Your survey came to the conclusion, amazingly, that there's a problem with morale. But they're folding themselves in half over there, trying to impugn you as a man. They're getting nowhere. America's watching. Let me ask you about these deployments, Inspector General Kafari. Deployments from across the country down to the southern border, where agents were moved from where they lived and worked, where their family is, where their kids go to school, to go down to the southern border. Were those deployments voluntary, or were the agents ordered?
In certain cases, according to the agents and other employees of the department who were deployed, they were voluntary, and in others, they were voluntold to go.
So could you clarify what that means? I know what it means. I'm a veteran, an Army veteran, was a cop for 12 years. I mean, you get volunteered. Your chain of command tells you, yeah, we need you to volunteer for this. So these guys are deployed for quite some time in incredibly difficult circumstances. They love their country. They're serving their country. By and large, they concur. But the longer they stay down there, the more it impacts themselves, their family, their morale, the esprit de corps of their units. I think it's obvious that this system of moving people down there has been detrimental to the health and well-being of our agents. It's concerning that agents are not performing their primary law enforcement roles. America's largely under the impression that we're moving border agents down there to enhance law enforcement. Is that the roles that these agents are primarily performing, Mr. Kafari?
The role that they were hired to do in the performance of their duties is to do law enforcement, at least for the Border Patrol and the 1811 criminal investigators who were deployed there.
But what role are they actually performing down there?
They're doing some law enforcement, but they're also providing care and welfare services to the detained and those individuals who they're processing.
Thank you, Inspector General. Thank you for your service. God bless you, sir. Stand strong. My time has expired, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Thank you, Congressman Lynch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kafari, first let me say that I've been on this committee for 22 years and have been involved in dozens and dozens and dozens of investigations, from 20-something trips to Afghanistan, over 20 to Iraq, Ukraine. There has been no member on this committee currently that has done more investigations and involved in this type of work longer than I have, and I'm honored to do it. Mr. Kafari, I do want to say that our relationship with the inspectors general has, during that 22 years that I've been on this committee, has been a partnership. We rely heavily on our inspectors general to cooperate with us. It's been a good relationship and I've dealt with probably 3 to 4 dozen different inspectors general over that 22 years, and I've been proud to do it. I have to say that based on the evidence I have before me, our relationship with you is different. It is different. We have not had the cooperation and the relationship of trust that we have had with other inspectors general. We have not had that with you, and I regret that. I don't diminish your service to your country or any other capacity. I'm just talking about the facts of what has happened and what's going on. Are you familiar with the Project on Government Oversight?
Yes.
Okay, so the Project on Government Oversight is a nonpartisan, independent, nonprofit group that we have worked with for more than the 22 years I've been here. I think they started in 1980. And they have been nothing short of honest and forthright, and I've worked with them in Republican administrations and Democratic administrations. And sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't, but they have always been straightforward, regardless of whose administration was in power at that time. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Project on Government Oversight urging the President of the United States to remove Inspector General Joseph V. Kafari from his position with the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General.
Okay.
Mr. Kafari, are you currently another group that we work with very closely and continue to is the Council of Inspectors General, and they're a group that not only does their own independent work but also polices other inspectors general. Am I correct in saying that you are currently under investigation by the Council of Inspectors General on integrity and efficiency? Is that correct, Mr. Kafari?
You're correct, Mr. Lynch.
What is the basis of that investigation? Could you share that with us?
I'm uncertain, since I'm under investigation, if I can share that in a public setting. I'd be happy to discuss it with you.
Well, they've made it public, so I'm not sure how private this is. There are several allegations. One, as the ranking member of this full committee indicated, was your failure to promptly notify Congress of crucial information on the Secret Service erasure of text messages related to the January 6th attacks on this Capitol. That did happen. And I witnessed Republicans and Democrats running for their lives. So anybody who says that did not happen Let's just disabuse that notion. But the relationship of trust that we have had with our inspectors general have not been continued. I want to yield my remaining time to the ranking member.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The time is up.
Yeah, I get it.
Yep, go ahead, sir.
I got the lesson.
Okay.
Sorry.
Kelly Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your report states that frequent deployments to the southern border are affecting staffing levels at the northern border. This is an important issue to my home state of North Dakota. Businesses rely on customers from both sides of the Canadian-U.S. border. Commerce doesn't stop at 5 p.m. when CBP closes a port of entry. Crops still need to be planted. Substantial detours to operating facilities significantly raise costs. After years of shortened operational hours, CBP finally extended hours at 3 ports of entry in North Dakota on a trial basis. But these hours are only temporary while CBP evaluates vehicular traffic, which does not account for other ramifications, including the transfer of goods and services. Lawful economic access to the United States should not be based on volume. It is the government's basic duty to maintain the northern border. And drawing down at the northern border to beef up the southern border does not justify shutting down North Dakota's economic sector. DHS is not properly allocating resources, and we talk about these things in large dollar amounts, but I'm going to talk about what is actually in the grand scope of things a fairly insignificant one. However, it would be significant at the northern border. One of your reports highlights that ICE spent over $17 million for hotel space and services that largely went unused in 2021. Can you elaborate on how ICE managed to waste $17 million in taxpayer resources?
If you're speaking about the contract that was between DHS and the Endeavors Corporation,
I am.
the contract required a minimum number of beds to be available to ICE during certain periods, and those beds would be paid for regardless of whether a migrant was actually staying in the room, in the hotel room.
Were the beds ever used?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Why was ICE able to use sole source contracting and not award a contract based on an open competitive process?
Because the question that you just asked relates to an ongoing matter, I'm not able to provide more sufficient information in this setting.
Okay. If the company had no experience, why were they awarded the contract over more experienced companies?
Again, Congressman, the same answer as before.
So my next question, there's an ongoing investigation, so hopefully somebody will be held accountable.
Sir.
Would $17 million help at the northern border?
I believe it would help anywhere.
I mean, we don't have the volume that they have on the southern border. Everybody understands that. But we also move a lot of products that a lot of people need. If you like bread, you like what goes on between North Dakota and Canada. If you like, to eat a hamburger, you care about what goes on in North Dakota and Canada. I'm just trying to understand where we end up and how we get to these places that we have these scenarios where we are paying for money. I mean, we've seen people all over the country, many in sanctuary cities, balk and revolt at the fact that we're moving migrants across and moving them out of a high density area into other places. When we're talking about, do we have any analysis at this point yet of what we're spending on hotel rooms and other facilities while we have $17 million worth of unused beds?
I believe, Congressman, we have an ongoing audit to look at the movement of migrants and what it's costing DHS to do that.
Thank you. I would just say, as we finish this off, that we have to figure out a better way to do this. We have at the same time, the level of frustration from my constituents that exists when we have unfettered access, whether it's ports of entry, whether it's between ports of entry, and the vast majority of illegal activity that is occurring. And at the same time, economic sectors for northern border communities are absolutely being crushed. And it started with COVID, and it started with vaccine mandates, and it started with and it finally ended with the United States being the last, essentially, country in the civilized world that lifted those mandates. And these are real-world consequences. And when we talk about trust in government and talk about trust in these issues, when people see fentanyl flowing across the southern border, ports of entry, between ports of entry, we've had that debate 1,000 times, when we see people being released into the interior of the United States with court dates that don't exist for 5, 7, 9 years in advance, and I got a farmer from Grano, North Dakota that can't get across the border after 5 p.m. because we don't have the resources to do it. The frustration is real, and it exists all across the country, and it exists as far away from the southern border as you could possibly be, which is North Dakota. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Moskowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The border's been a problem for a long period of time because Congress has failed to pass comprehensive immigration reform. It's not like this is a new issue. This is something that's been going on for decades here. It's been passed from one president to the next to the next. Is it possibly worse now? Well, that's what happens when you have a problem that you don't fix for 2 decades. The same people who talk about the border, it's not like they've come up with solutions. They complain to get on Fox News every day. But it's not like we're having solutions. And so I want to ask a couple of questions because I'm frustrated with Homeland as well. I mean, I have folks back home who were raped by their nanny. She spent 20 years in jail in Florida. And all the family wanted to know is that when she was released, what was going to happen. That's it. She was a victim. She had a right to know. And I had even on her behalf made connections with Homeland on this issue. We were told, don't worry, we will make sure the family knows if she's deported or if we're keeping her, whatever the story is. Guess what? None of it happened. The rapist was deported. Nobody knows what happened to her. She's not flagged in the system. And now that family, the girl, who's now a mother of 2, has to be worried about where her rapist is. And so I have a couple of questions because obviously there's complaints all around, whether it's Secret Service or ICE. Homeland was founded 20 years ago after a national emergency. It's got 22 agencies in it. I'm not going to list them all. They're all household names. Has Homeland become too big? Is it too big? Is it time to split Homeland up? Is it time to reform the bureaucracy?
Congressman, let me first say that you and I did have a discussion about the individual who was convicted of rape, and we discussed the Crime Victims' Rights Act, and the prosecutor should have complied with that. I hope that that information was helpful that I supplied to you.
Well, that's a whole other issue because,
Yes,
quite frankly, the rapist had more rights than the victim.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. I will say that Homeland Security, as the 3rd largest department in the federal government, is quite large. It was put together, as you described.
You're almost as big as DOD.
Yes, sir. We're number 3, right behind DOD and Health and Human Services. It perhaps may require a look by this committee or others, maybe the Committee on Homeland Security, to see sort of a look back to see if it's fulfilling the mission that it was intended to do. But that would be a decision for Congress and not for me as the Inspector General.
So you don't have any suggestions on potential reforms or opinions on whether you think the agency can still function with 22 agencies. I mean, I hear it's kind of like when all the agencies get together with the secretary, it's like the Knights of the Round Table. They each give 5-minute updates to the secretary, and then the meeting's over.
I will share that from our experience of doing audits and inspections and even criminal investigations, that silos of information remain to this day in DHS, which is presenting a problem for effective management.
Yeah. So what I would like to hear is I'd like to hear solutions to problems rather than continuing to gaslight issues at Homeland or an INS or Customs and Border, whatever it is. And I don't hear any solutions. And I think it's quite time we start looking at reform at Homeland. I'll yield the balance of my time to the ranking member.
Thank you. Mr. Kafari, in April 2022, I want to get back to something. The Nonpartisan Watchdog Project on Government Oversight, and this was mentioned by another member, broke a disturbing story that your office sought to censor findings of sexual harassment and misconduct at DHS. According to the draft report that we've obtained in the committee, 28,000 DHS employees were surveyed, and more than 10,000 of the 28,000 reported experiencing sexual harassment and misconduct in the workplace, yet the report was shelved. Mr. Kafari, did your report on the morale of CBP, which we've been discussing, consider the effects of sexual harassment on employees?
I'm sorry, ranking member, what's the question?
Did your report on the morale of CBP or ICE employees consider the effect of sexual harassment and misconduct? I think the answer to that is actually no. But would you agree that sexual harassment and misconduct are one factor that could actually impact morale?
It could be a factor, certainly.
Thank you. And yet it was not considered in that report. And so I just want to make that note. I also, with the remainder of my time, just want to note that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll discuss it later.
Mr.